Nau mai ki tēnei puni I pāho. Welcome to this episode of Tū ka puta kōrero. Join Vini and I as we navigate love and life as partners, and our wawata, our dreams for language within the home. In this episode, we take a step back and introduce ourselves. We talk a little bit about our lives and our whare. We want you to get to know us a little bit and learn how our language experiences to date have shaped our lives. We hope you enjoy it. In episode 1, you heard us use the phrase nau mai, welcome. In this epi, you'll hear the use of that phrase again, nau mai, but we're going to add something new in, ki tēnei whare. The whole phrase will be nau mai ki tēnei whare, welcome to this house, or more naturally, welcome to our house. It's a handy phrase you use to welcome people into your whare. We also use this phrase a different way at the start of our episodes. Nau mai ki tēnei puni I pāho. Welcome to this podcast episode. By the end of episode 2, you can use it 2 ways. So grab a cuppa and pull up a pew. It's time to find out if we're tū ka puta kōrero.
Who are you?
My name is Ariana. I go by Ari or Ari for short. I'm young.
Oh.
Ish. I have a 10-year-old son. I am Tokalauan Māori and New Zealand European. I was raised by a mum and a dad that only spoke English at home. My dad, his only output with Tokalauan was telling us to do chores or discipline.
I think that'll be a really common thread.
My toke in that area, great. I'm fluent. But so I grew up in an English-speaking household. Didn't often go to my marae and live in, only really for special occasions, and also didn't really go to our Tokalauan halls unless that was for special occasions as well. So I wasn't really around the language. My nāna on my toke side spoke a lot of Tokalauan at home because she knew that I didn't really understand. She chose to speak English to me too. When I got to high school, I wanted to take Japanese, but was voluntold to take Māori to learn my language. And at the time, didn't feel connected to it. I just stuck with it for 3 years because I felt like I had to. And then in my last 2 years, I picked something else. My sister, she's 10 years younger than me. And she embraced and excelled at te reo classes really early on. She joined kapahaka. She was really passionate about it, really proud about it. And I remember feeling so proud of her while she was doing that, but feeling so sad for myself that I didn't have that same passion for it. Felt like, okay, this is something that I want to do, but made no effort for. When we actually started dating, you were probably one of the very few Māori speakers my age that I've met, and freaked out when you told me that you not only could speak Māori, but you taught it for a job. Yeah, that really freaked me out. And I was just like, oh, he's not going to be with...
Speaker and teacher.
Yeah, speaker and teacher. And I was just like, oh.
Probably a dick about it.
Yeah. And, you were willing to teach me and guide me and things like that. You made it just so easy, and we worked through all the things that I felt like was holding me back from doing it. I feel like it took me a long time to feel that pride in myself and that pride in my culture. And like, I feel like I'm there now. Maybe not necessarily with my language, but in terms of identity.
My name's Vini. I have a Māori name, ēnei, that my late grandmother gifted to me in 2014. That name comes from my te arawa side. That's my Tapsel side. We don't actually descend from ēnei. We descend from his older brother, Retireti Tapihana, Retireti Tapsel. And I'm also from Tauranga Moana, So I'm from ngā pōti ki ata mapahore, Ngāti Pūkenga and Ngāi Te Rangi. My Māori side comes wholly from my dad's side. My mother's side is wholly Pākehā. If you dig a bit deeper, Scandinavian, Scottish and British. And then I also have Dutch and German and things from dad's side as well. That's our non-Māori whakapapa. So quite a lot going on in terms of our ancestry, which is so very common for people now. I was raised solely in English by my English-speaking mother, and I did hear from Dad that we were Māori. Like he did like tell us. Wasn't always sure what that meant, and over my childhood, which was all in English, he taught us how to pronounce things. So that was great. Like I felt like he taught us a bit about pronunciation. But other than that, like no real upbringing, definitely not on the marae. I think I was 22 when I first went to my marae with my sister. Pretty sure it was 22. And I'd been learning Māori for 4 years at that point. So 18 years as a monolingual English speaker, and then throughout my schooling experience, being understood that I was Māori, but not quite Māori enough, and then being understood that I was Māori, and therefore not Pākehā enough. So there was that throughout my schooling. I was really lucky to go to very, very intensely privileged schools. I'm really thankful for lots of what I learnt there. But I was also left really, really upset and traumatized by a lot of my schooling experiences, to the point that by the time I was ready to leave school, I really just wanted to do something that that place would perceive as rebellious, which for me was understand myself. Yeah. One thing I learned is that in places like that, you are not meant to understand yourself. You are meant to let other people own you, control you, even when they're hurting you or discriminating against you. I learned throughout that time that all of this was just to create humans that weren't able to think for themselves and stuff like that. And it just didn't gel with me because none of it was real. And out there in the big wide world, it's so different. And I knew that was true because the things that I would hear and see and be taught at school about the way the world was, I would then go home and it was completely different with my upbringing, which was not of the same like intensely privileged existence that I'd had at school. And that's not to say that every person at that school was horrible. I made some great friends, some of whom I still keep. But yeah, and I was like, okay, cool. What do I want to do? Something, rebellious or naughty. I want to learn Māori. Cool, amazing. I moved to Wellington, started a music degree, started learning Māori, and immediately fell out of love with music and fell more and more in love with te reo Māori. At that time, I dropped out of music and I thought, well, I'll just do Māori for a bit until I figure out what I want to do. But I was falling in love with it so much. I think it took me a little while to realize that actually this is a viable career life. So that's essentially what I did. I just stayed in that life of really just being in love with everything to do with the language, but not just the language itself. People go off in different directions. They fall in love with interpretation or translation or composing songs or literature or teaching. And I never quite fell in love with those things as much as I fell in love with the real revival of the language. Everybody has attitudes and feelings about revival, but I fell in love with the true cogs of how to grow a language and make it exist in a better sense than it did yesterday. To know everything about revival linguistics and the sociolinguistics of revival. So there's a big academic background that comes with that. So that's me. And I do teach. Mostly it's that I love thinking about, which is why the language planning stuff is such a big part of my life, being able to turn around and actually saying my job is to help the four walls of this organisation, this whare, this family's house, this whatever, become more Māori so that they, next time it's not welcome, but it's like a no mai ki tēnei whare, no mai ki te kāinga, no mai ki te wāhi mahi, whatever, in a way that works and sounds really good, contributes to the life of the language, uplifts Māori people. That's pretty cool.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And in case people didn't know, we work together as well. So we are with each other 24/7. Nah.
Scale of 1 to 10, how hoha are you?
Yeah, scale of 1 to 10, how hoha are you at work and at home?
Why do you think it's important that couples talk about language things? Because we talk about it a lot.
Do you think, though, that we talk about it a lot because it's your job? Or, like, do you think that someone that was just proficient would talk about language as much as we would with their partner that wasn't? Because I feel like you have so many thoughts about it because you've studied it and it's your job. Like, we naturally talk about it a lot. And I love those kōrero, but, like, do you think that we talk about it more?
I wonder if we do. I wonder if we talk about it more than any other couple who was the same language background, same everything. I wonder if we talk about it more just purely because it rules my everyday.
Well, when you were talking about language revitalization, I would assume that most, if not all, Māori speakers would want to pass that on to their babies. Regardless of whether you want to teach that to your partner or not, I feel like the bigger focus is on the next generation. The language just seen out and about is more frequent every year. Would you say that te reo is in a really good place right now? Like, still always more work to do, but I mean, from someone that's not from that background and doesn't have the knowledge that you do, I would say 100%.
I think the reason that it is a prominent part of our lives now in New Zealand is because of all of that work that's gone into those things, which I think is really, really great. Like, you know, just changing people's attitudes and making people aware and allowing people to celebrate, giving people permission to celebrate, giving people a little exposure to language is really good, because all of those things have been so good for just allowing people who do speak Māori to just know that it's a bit more okay than it was last generation. That's really cool. Maybe 2 generations ago, when none of this Māori language stuff existed, people just did their lives and they just fell into whatever patterns and whatever exposure they had, and they fell into the societal makeup and setup that had been geared for them by colonialism and legislation and all of those things, and they just fell into patterns of raising their kids without te reo. I think the reason that it's so important that couples have their language chats is related to that. So there's all that societal work going on, which is so good because it gives us that permission to go outside and use the language and things like that. But I also feel like a lot of couples don't have those chats. When it comes down to having kids and deciding what they want, they don't necessarily have the right communication avenues. I think I've seen that a lot as a language planner, and I'm really aware that I don't want that for us. I don't want for us to have a language goal and not talk about it and then it not happen. And I know that a lot of language stuff between generations can be quite negative. I've observed that academically, and in my work as a language planner, I don't want that for our kids. I want it to be positive and uplifting because I know that that's ultimately what matters more than anything else. I also don't want us to fall in those traps of one partner feeling excluded, because sometimes there might be exclusion, but I don't want you to feel negative about that.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to feel like you can't exclude me from tokelau. And I know that a lot of the tension between couples tends to be around exclusion and not having sorted that out first.
Yeah.
And if the kids catch wind, the kids automatically switch off language at that point. They go, if it's going to cause a fight between my parents, I'm not interested. I mean, we have these chats all the time, but I want us to be able to have them in a way that other people can go, oh, I've got to have that chat with my partner, because otherwise it just comes out as a fight. a parent who might be wanting to raise their child in another language. There'll be no conversation about it until the baby's born. And then one parent might start using the language with their child. Or even later on in life, they might be like 10 and all of a sudden one parent's like, I want to speak Māori.
Yeah.
And then they go and learn something, they bring it back home, and the other partner will be like, oh, I suppose this chat isn't for me. I suppose this is a you thing. I suppose I'm not allowed to sit at this table because this table looks like a, Māori language space. Oh, well, that's not mine. Yeah. And then they leave. And then that's a fight, basically, after that. And really what it came down to is there was just no talk about our goals. Like, this is what I want for my child. Like, when you're around your tokelao family and there's toke being spoken, I do understand the exclusion, but I don't feel excluded, if that makes sense. I don't feel angry. I don't feel like when we leave, I'm gonna be like, Ari, you didn't accommodate me. I don't feel those things in the way that I've seen and observed other couples.
Yeah.
I just understand the exclusion. I'm like, this is a tokelao whānau. They are used to and comfortable with doing this.
That's their more comfortable language.
So I'm cool with it. You're just doing you, and that's really cool. Yeah. But other couples don't do that, and I think it's something that's so important. It's like just straight up chats about those things. If people would just have that chat, people wouldn't feel excluded.
When I was with you very early in our relationship and I went to my first Māori kaupapa and you had heaps of friends there and you're talking away in te reo and a couple of people spoke to me in Māori, but they were just like, how are you sort of thing, so I could reply, but felt really nervous, like, oh God, like someone's going to have mean conversations with me and I'm going to be like, sorry, I don't know. But I didn't at all feel excluded from the conversations or anything. Like, I was more nervous that someone was going to go off and want to have like a big chat to me and me have to say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't speak te reo yet. Or I only speak a little bit. But I always just felt privileged to even be in the presence of it. It's giving me this drive that I want to, like, one day I'm going to be a part of this and be able to like talk. But like also the other cool thing about it was you've always been so supportive, like checking in with what you want from your partner in general, because that can apply to your language goals as well. Remember the first time you asked me, okay, so you want to learn te reo and I can help you, but what works for you? Like, yes, I am a teacher, but do you want me to teach you as like in a teacher setting or as your partner or both? And I'd never thought about it like that.
Do you want me to teach you or do you want me to teach you?
Yeah. I hadn't even thought about that.
That's so true. Like when you've got a speaker and a non-speaker person, I think that's so important, Like, I want to know how you want to learn. And I also want to know where your thoughts are at in terms of where our relationship stops for those moments, and it's a teacher-student, like, where's the boundary? And so I want to know how you learn, and I want to know where your boundaries or expectations or needs, or I'm not sure what the right word is, but I don't want to cross them in a negative way.
Just try different things and see what works, I suppose.
Yeah, I want to be your partner first.
Learning with someone that has a teaching background and being your partner, there is a huge level of care involved, where if you were just in the classroom learning, like, of course there's still care there, but they don't know you intimately, and it could be like for a couple hours a week, but I have you every day and I'm very lucky.
I love that you allow me my space to figure out like where I'm a teacher and when I'm not. Like, you never expect me to put my teaching hat on at home.
No.
And you always give me lots of room to think about that, which I really, really value. I've taught bilingual English, full immersion, like I've taught all these, lots of age groups, lots of language backgrounds, lots of human backgrounds, but I've never taught a partner. And so I love that you give me that room to try and figure out, because I'm not sure there is one right answer if partners should do this. I'm so scared of being an overbearing teacher because in the classroom, that's your job. Like a real theatrical, overbearing, teacher. But I'm not always sure that's the right thing for us to do because it's not us. Like our genuine, authentic relationship is not that.
Yeah.
But then there might be some times where, depending on how we've decided to learn in that moment, where you just flat out ask me a question and I feel the vibe is all right to just launch into a grammatical explanation. I think my biggest fear, actually it is my biggest fear, is as a language planner, I know that keeping positivity matters beyond all else. Some people will say, speak as much as you can. It's the speaking that matters. Some people will say, it's the correctness that matters. A little bit that's correct is better than a lot that's incorrect. I don't agree with any of those. My own one is the moment your passion for learning with me falls away, that's when I think I've failed. I'm really scared about getting to that moment. So I just want to make sure that whatever it is, it's whatever is positive for you in that moment.
I think one really big thing that had always really hurt my feelings growing up was being corrected. And it's not the action of being corrected that hurt my feelings. It was how I was being corrected. It's the tone. It's the attitude. You even asked me when we first talked about our student-teacher couple relationship, how I would like to be corrected, and no one has ever asked me that. And it's such a small thing, but it kind of blew my mind because I was just like, no one's bothered to ask me that. And of course I want to improve. I want to be corrected. You'll give me a different way of saying it without even saying that my original way was wrong. And you do all these, you say things in such a cool way that I feel, one, that I'm learning, and two, I'm getting better, and that I have a great teacher and I feel confident to use it.
Being corrected in a certain way can be the make or break moment. And the break moment means that ultimately the entire interaction shut down your language use for however long it takes you to get over it, and you might never quite get over it. You always remember that being corrected. Whereas like if people just didn't do that, you would still use the language. And I think that's a big mistake that a lot of really proficient people make in language. If it turns you off and stops you from speaking, then that's wholly negative in terms of someone's language experience, and it doesn't contribute to the life of that language. If there's a kind way to do it, then I think that's like, why wouldn't you? Because I want you to speak more, and I want you to love your language, and some of that's selfish because I love it and I want you to love it so that I can love it more with you. I think that's so important. And I think one of the things that you said there that was so special was how one corrects also matters to me. It's one of the reasons why I asked you is I don't want to do anything that you are uncomfortable with, and that's the beauty of my job.
As your partner, I feel very mindful of you just wanting to live your everyday life and not be the teacher anymore, because you could have spent the whole 5 hours of your day teaching and then you come home and I feel like I want to learn. But you might be like, I've had a really big day, my brain is tired. I'm not going to ask you in that moment.
Appreciate that about you. And I might have a really long day teaching, and then I might come home and be like, oh, brain is fried. But I also know that if you wanted to do something real based, I would still want to make time for it, because I know you and I know that it's not going to be a teacher-student type interaction, and it's not the kind of thing where you're asking me to prep 3 hours of learning content. I feel like I still want to do it and I can still find the energy, because it's not the same. Like, it's just us hanging out and we just do it. But that's because of the way that we've set it up. We did one yesterday that was really fun. We were shopping, and what was the song? I'm the problem.
Oh.
It's me.
Yeah, oh, the Taylor Swift song.
I'm the problem, it's me. And I just turned to you and I was like, ko wai te raru, or something like that, you know, who's the problem? And you turned around and I think you
I heard you wrong.
thought I was asking what language it was that the couple was speaking, I think.
Yeah, oh, yeah. There was a couple speaking another language walking past us and not hearing what you said properly. I thought you were asking, like, what language is that? Even and then you said, no, the song. And then I was like, I know what raru means. I don't know why in that moment I thought you were talking
what
about
I thought was
something
so
else.
great about that, though, about that interaction, was that in our, like, just normal conversation, I'll mishear something and you'd be like, no, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Or you might mishear something and I'll be like, no, blah, blah, blah. It was really cool because then you're like, oh, yeah, I know the word raru. And I felt like you'd learned something through that interaction that will stick with you, you know? Like,
yeah, because every time I hear that song now, I'm going to think of that sentence.
And because Taylor's my favourite, it'll be on repeat in the house. So, you know.
Why didn't you teach her to do
But I really, really liked that. And I was like, that's such a cool way to learn. The last one that I said to you that was so memorable was I said, he hato nama. And I was holding the phone and you knew what I was asking just from me saying, he hato nama. Knowing me, I struggled to get into these phones. And so you immediately knew like what to say. It was like one of those moments where you heard something, you understood it, and you were able to respond, but they were totally just normal, natural. It wasn't a lesson. We hadn't planned it. Those moments are really valuable because they stick, you know?
Yes.
Do you consider yourself a multilingual person?
If you'd asked me this question 4 years ago before I met you, I would have said no. But now I say yes. And that's partly because you said no. But when I hear that being asked, they're not talking about level of proficiency. There's nothing in that sentence that talks about level of proficiency. To me, it's just if you can speak it, even if it's a little bit. If there's some sort of output, even if your whole sentence is in English and there's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 words in Māori, that's still speaking the language. To me anyway. Some people might disagree on that. But, you know, the more output you have with just those sprinklings of words, it definitely builds my confidence.
I feel like one of the really amazing things that we haven't quite got around to believing about ourselves yet is that we are all bilingual, we are all Māori speakers. Once you are in the habit of using words in another language, once you're doing that authentically, that's when you kind of stop being a monolingual and you start being a Māori speaker. You know, you start being a bilingual or a multilingual. There are so many people who don't yet understand that they're Māori speakers. They think they're not.
Yeah.
But they have so much language. Like, you have heaps of language. You have way more language than you realise, and you use way more than you realise. And that's the case for so many people.
The reason why I would have not thought I was 4 years ago is because I always use the word fluent. I have to be fluent. And then I met you, and then you were like, I'm not even fluent. And I was like, what? And you're like, no, there's heaps. Like, there's barely any fluent speakers, but I'm proficient. And I was just like, I never thought about it like that. And I think people get caught up in the word fluent. Where is the line? Because I know that there are a lot of people that would disagree that someone of my level of understanding would be considered bilingual or a Māori speaker. At what point would I be considered one if someone is saying, no, you're not?
I think for me, the first thing is, with my academic hat on, I just have no time for colonial definitions that don't suit my needs. Colonial definitions of things that uphold colonial needs that don't, you know, recognise other people's. And so, you know, the word fluent in itself is from that really horrible colonial research from, you know, way back in the day when English academics had started asserting that people who spoke other languages were inherently problematic. And so they went looking for problems. And one of them is they measured how many words a multilingual speaker could speak in English. And then they did the same in the other language. And at the time it was French. And so they counted up all those words. And those words that they knew in both of those languages were less than the monolingual English academics knew in their one language. And so they made the assumption that because this person couldn't do both to the same level, that there was something wrong with them and that they were, weak, and that multilingualism or bilingualism was weak. It was something that stunted your linguistic growth to the point that, it was a problem and that you were deficient. And so we then picked up the same thing here in that, unless you were as fluent as a Pākehā monolingual English speaker is, unless you're that in both languages, you're deficient, you're problematic, you got something wrong with you, which is wholly stupid. And and we just bought it. We were just like, oh yeah, okay,
this
sweet.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Now we're going to take it to our communities and spread it.
Yeah, exactly. And so the academic definitions, and I know that non-academics have definitions which are valid too, but the academic definitions are this kind of speaker is called a stable bilingual. And the stable bilingual is someone, or an equal bilingual. They have the same capacity in both languages. And then the other part to that is they can do everything in both languages. And so that's such a big taumata to get to, like that level of being able to do literally anything. And so the question then becomes, what's anything? Anything is geared again in research by the English monolingual things over here. And so you go, okay, can the bilingual person comfortably handle themselves at home in both languages? Yep, okay, cool. That's tick. What about go to work? Yep, okay, nice, that's okay. What about court? Could they go, because court's a very specific type of language. It's a type of language where you have to know the right tropes to use and, your honours and all that kind of stuff. You have to know how to say that. Could an equal and stable bilingual do that stuff? And that's where, for our languages, things start to get less relevant because Māori is not native to a court process. That's an inserted court process. We haven't always been allowed to use Māori there. So there's a chance that a lot of bilinguals wouldn't necessarily know the exact right words to use when they are in that place. And then there's the last part of it, which is we have different kinds of oratory in Māoridom that not everyone has access to. But if you can't do them, then you are technically not able to reach that equal and stable level. And so basically all of that led me on this journey where I was like, these just suck for us. Like they're not at all relevant. And I would look at the upper echelons of the Māori language world and see like 2 or 3 really stable bilinguals in maybe the really oldest generation. And then below that, there would be like maybe 100 really stable bilinguals. But once you got past that 100, there are still like a couple of 100,000 people who are still living their lives in te reo. And so that was what really taught me that actually this whole idea around fluency just sucks. It's not useful. It has nothing to do with our lives. I think what's more meaningful for us is when we're authentically and genuinely using language, that's where our bilingualism, multilingualism counts. Do you think I'm different in Māori than English?
Yes.
Do you think I'm cooler?
Yes, I do. No. It depends on the context. The first time I ever saw you speak te reo at an event, I felt very like, oh, who is this man? Just, I don't know what it was. It was like the way that you were carrying yourself. Your voice was like lower. And because the the version of you I know at home and the version I know of you as my partner, like we're just really goofy together. We just like laugh all the time and it's very like loving and nice and kind. And then seeing you on stage, like very serious. I don't feel like you're my partner in that setting. I just feel like you're this like real fancy Māori guy.
Do you think that you will be different when you reach the proficiency that you want for yourself?
I don't think so, because I don't think I'd be in formal settings. The only time I could ever see myself feeling like I was a different person was if I ever had the privilege to do karanga. I just feel like you're in a whole another mindset. I'm assuming, like when you do it. And when you're watching someone karanga, what I see is exactly how I would see you on stage. Do you feel like a different person?
Yeah, I feel like my humor is different. It's still dry. I don't.
I just laugh. I look around when people start laughing. I'm like, oh, you said a joke.
Yeah, like I definitely think that's true. And I think we love to play on words in Māori. I think that's a really big part of our humour. But then, yeah, I think probably the serious side of things brings out a different tone of voice and a different part of me.
Different vibes.
Yeah, I've got more work to do in that proficiency space around formal oratory because it's not a skill of mine, but I am really enjoying learning that I'm a different person in a different language, and it's been a really beautiful, wholesome experience, you know, to learn to like, it's almost like meeting you again, you know.
I felt like I met you again in that space.
The more language you learn and the more that we change our language, the more we will re-meet each other and renegotiate, and some of that might be scary even. Sometimes we might go, oh, I didn't know my partner was like that. And I think a lot of people have this, they experience this as a couple, when you've got two speakers and they try to change the language of their home and they have to re-meet each other, you know, because they've been speaking a different language for so long, and you feel like you should know them but you don't. You have to renegotiate the rules.
Because the words that you choose to use might be different than what you'd say in English. And that would either be down to how much kupu you have.
Yeah. Like this, you know, we say no mai a lot in Aotearoa, but there's other versions of that too, you know, no mai ki tēnei whare. Some people will say kuhu mai, tomo mai, which can mean slightly different things, but there still would be really appropriate for home. No mai ki te whare, tomo mai ki te whare, tauti mai. There's all these other ones.
That's a new one. Cool.
Yeah.
You could reinvent yourself in another language.
We could.
Do you feel like you get taken more seriously in Māori? Are you treated differently?
I've never thought about that. Maybe.
I feel like you carry yourself differently in a formal Māori setting than a formal English setting. And I can't explain it. I don't know if it's the way that you carry yourself. There's a lot of mana there. It's like there's just this level of confidence to you in that setting that's different to, not to say that you're not confident anywhere else. I can't explain it. I've seen you in both settings and you're day and night.
That's so cool. I'm going to ask you this again in like 30 years, and I'm going to ask you again. Because I want to know, like...
I might forget. You might forget. I might have bad memory by then.
You did say at the start of this episode that you were young, and I kept meaning to say that I was younger.
We really hope you enjoyed episode 2 of Tū Kapo Te Kōrero. Let us know what you think. Find us on socials, like our stuff, share it with your lovers and friends, and check out the links we post to the topics we might talk about on the show. We love hearing feedback, so long as it's based on a platform of high and reciprocal mana. Approach us as your friends, not as experts. As always, a massive shout out to the Matawai and the Te Ata, without whom this podcast would have not been possible. E te whare o te Matawai o ata, tēnei māua e mihi atu nei. In the next episode, we open up a little bit about our relationship and the power dynamics of one of us being more of a teacher and one more of a student. Catch us on the next episode of Tū Kapo Te Kōrero.